doing almost anything normal could technically get you arrested. Welcome to the Soviet Union, the only place on Earth where buying a pair of jeans, telling a joke, or being unemployed on a Tuesday could earn you a very serious conversation with a very serious man in a very grey coat. Or being unemployed on a Tuesday. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. And a genuine thank you to the listener who suggested tonight's topic. Your ideas really do shape what happens here, and this channel grows because of people like you. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you, because somehow it is always 2 in the morning somewhere. Oh, and we are now live on Spotify, so if you would rather drift off with just the audio, the link is waiting for you down in the description. And for those who want the full uninterrupted experience, there is also an ad-free extended version available through the membership, but only if that sounds like your kind of thing. Now dim the lights, switch on a fan for that soft white noise and get comfortable. Let us pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to live somewhere that had a rule for everything and a punishment for almost as much? Could you survive a place where owning the wrong record was a crime, where being late to work was a legal matter, and where a single American dollar tucked in your sock drawer could quietly ruin your entire decade? Would you last a week in a country where the government decided your job, your apartment, your holidays, and occasionally your opinions? And what happens when the most ordinary things you do without thinking, like grumbling about prices or selling a few extra potatoes, are quietly written down as offences against the state? Well, congratulations. You have just woken up somewhere in the Soviet Union. The year is 1975. Your alarm is a distant factory whistle. Your coffee is technically chicory. And almost everything you're about to do today is, in some small and deeply bureaucratic way, against the law. Good luck. Let us start with something small, something harmless, something folded quietly at the bottom of your sock drawer. A single American dollar. In most of the world, this is pocket change. In the Soviet Union, it is a small green rectangle of pure trouble. Private citizens are not permitted to hold foreign currency, and dealing in it is treated as a serious economic crime. That crisp dollar a tourist once tipped you is not a souvenir. It is evidence. And depending on the decade and the size of your stash, the consequences range from thoroughly unpleasant to genuinely terrifying, because at the height of it, large-scale currency dealing could carry the very harshest penalties the state had to offer. Here is the thing that makes it so absurd. The ruble is the only money you are supposed to touch, and the ruble does not travel. It cannot buy anything abroad, and abroad is somewhere you're not going anyway. So a foreign banknote has no legal use in your daily life whatsoever. You cannot spend it at the bakery. The woman behind the counter would faint. You cannot deposit it. The bank would file a report before you finish the sentence. And yet everyone secretly wants one, because that useless little scrap of paper is a key to another universe, the shadow world of foreign goods, imported cigarettes, and things that actually work. So you hide it. You become weirdly protective of a piece of paper worth less than a loaf of bread in the country that printed it. You tuck it behind a photograph, or inside the lining of a coat, or in the hollow belly of a book, feeling exactly like a man burying treasure, except your treasure is $1 and your pirates are accountants. Every time someone knocks on the door, your stomach does a little flip. Was that the neighbour? Or was that the beginning of a very long and very cold story? The truly nerve-wracking part is the exchange itself. If you want to turn that dollar into something useful, you have to find a dealer, and you have to do it in a doorway, in a stairwell, in the corner of a park where the benches have eyes. Money changes hands in a single practiced handshake. Nobody makes eye contact. It is the most tense financial transaction imaginable, and the product is a crumpled 20 from Ohio. And the punishments were not a joke, even when the crime sounds like one. In the early 1960s, two men named Rokotov and Fybyshenko ran a vast black market currency operation, and when they were caught, the law was actually changed to make their offence punishable by death. They were executed for trading money. Let that settle for a moment. In a great deal of the world, moving currency around is an entire respectable profession, complete with corner offices and expensive coffee. Here, at its worst, it was a capital offence. So you sit there in the dark, cradling your single contraband dollar, feeling the strange weight of it, this thin green promise of a life you're not allowed to want. You could exchange it, you could hide it, or you could simply stare at George Washington and wonder what on earth he did to end up as evidence in your sock drawer. Either way, you have committed your first crime of the day, and it is not even light out yet. And speaking of things that could get you into trouble before breakfast, let us get you dressed, because your wardrobe, comrade, is about to become a felony. Now let us get dressed and immediately regret it. You reach for the one item nearly every young person in the country secretly craves: a pair of real Western blue jeans with the little copper rivets and the faint smell of a world you're not allowed to visit. The trouble is, these jeans did not come from a Soviet shop, because Soviet shops did not sell them. They came from a farsovщик, a black market trader who deals in foreign goods, and buying from him is illegal. So you're now wearing several months of somebody's salary and a minor criminal offence, all neatly below the waist. You might be wondering why anyone would risk anything for a pair of trousers, but you have to understand what jeans meant here. They were not just clothing. They were a passport, a rebellion, a rumour of America stitched into cotton. Soviet factories made trousers, of course, sturdy and shapeless, and roughly the colour of a rainy Tuesday. What they did not make was denim that fit, denim that faded beautifully, denim that whispered, "You are young, and the world is bigger than this." The famous Western brands were not brands at all here. They were legends. So a whole underground economy grew up around them. The farsovщик was the middleman, the smooth operator who lurked near the hotels where foreign tourists stayed, waiting to buy the clothes right off a visitor's back. A Finnish tourist could practically fund his entire vacation by arriving in 3 pairs of jeans and leaving in none. The trader would then sell them onward at a markup that would make a modern luxury boutique blush. And the prices were genuinely insane. A single pair of good Western jeans could cost the equivalent of a month or two of an ordinary worker's wages. Imagine paying 2 months of your salary for one pair of pants, then wearing them constantly, defending them with your life, and repairing them until they were more thread than fabric. People did not casually own 5 pairs of jeans. People owned 1 pair of jeans and a deep, tender, emotional attachment to them. The risk ran in both directions. The trader was committing the crime of speculation, dealing illegally in foreign goods, and if caught could face real prison time. But even you, the humble buyer, were participating in something the state frowned upon, funding a black market and quietly announcing that Soviet fashion was, to put it gently, not cutting it. You were making a statement, and the statement was, "I would like to look like the enemy, please." There is a beautiful absurdity to it all. An entire superpower, with its rockets and its factories and its 5-year plans, could not simply produce a decent pair of jeans, and so its own youth turned to smugglers and stairwell deals to get them. The demand was so relentless that fakes flooded the market too. Badly stitched imitations passed off as the genuine article, and knowing how to spot a real pair became a survival skill in itself. You learned to check the rivets, the stitching, the little tells, like a jeweller inspecting a diamond, except the diamond was denim, So there you stand, dressed at last, wearing what is essentially a small fortune and a quiet act of defiance wrapped around your legs. You look good, you feel dangerous, and you have technically broken the law simply by choosing an outfit, which is a genuinely impressive way to start a morning. Now that you're dressed to offend the state, let us put on some music, because your record collection, it turns out, is even more illegal than your trousers. Time for a little music quietly, with the volume low and one ear turned toward the door. Western records are banned, so some enterprising soul has pressed your favourite forbidden song onto the only flexible material widely available, a used medical X-ray. That is right. Your rock and roll is playing off somebody's discarded rib cage or fractured skull, ghostly and crackling under the needle. These homemade bootleg discs were nicknamed bone music, and they were gloriously, defiantly illegal. You can just make out the melody beneath the hiss, along with the faint grey shadow of a stranger's lungs. The system was as clever as it was macabre. Real vinyl was scarce and controlled, and Western records were nearly impossible to obtain legally, so underground music lovers got creative. Hospitals threw out mountains of old X-ray film, and that film happened to be just flexible and groovable enough to hold a recording. Bootleggers would get their hands on a smuggled record, cut the X-ray into a rough circle, burn a hole in the centre with a lit cigarette, and use a modified recording machine to etch the music straight into somebody's former chest cavity. The result was a record you could literally see through. Hold it up to the light and there is a spine, a set of ribs, the ghostly curve of a skull. People called them ribs, or bones, or music on the bones, and buying one felt like a transaction out of a spy novel. You did not walk into a shop. You found a guy who knew a guy who happened to have his coat pockets full of X-rayed skeletons humming with forbidden jazz and rock and roll. The sound quality was, to be diplomatic, terrible. These were flimsy, single-sided, and they wore out fast. Play your bootleg of a smuggled tune a few dozen times and it would degrade into pure static, your idol slowly dissolving back into someone's fractured femur. Some bootleggers were reportedly not above a cruel prank either, recording a few seconds of music followed by a mocking voice telling the buyer off for chasing decadent Western trash. You paid good money for a skeleton, and the skeleton insulted you. But people did it anyway, over and over, because the alternative was silence, or worse, only the officially approved music. The state had very firm ideas about what your ears should enjoy, and those ideas did not include the wild, hip-swivelling, morally suspicious sounds drifting in from the West. Rock and roll, certain jazz, anything that sounded too free, too foreign, too fun, was treated as a corrupting influence, a crack in the wall through which dangerous ideas might leak. So the bone records were more than music. They were a tiny act of rebellion you could hold in your hand, spin on a turntable, and dance to in a locked room with the curtains drawn. Each one was a small miracle of stubbornness, proof that you cannot actually ban a melody, no matter how many towers you build or how many rules you write. Music finds a way, even if the way is somebody's old lung scan. Eventually the crackdowns intensified, the equipment improved, tape recorders spread, and the golden age of skeleton records faded. But for a while there, an entire generation fell in love, rebelled, and danced to songs pressed into the bones of the anonymous sick. It is honestly one of the strangest and most beautiful stories in the whole history of music, and it happened because a government tried to silence a song and a nation answered with radiology. So enjoy your ghostly, crackling, skeletal soundtrack. Just keep it quiet. Because the next thing you attempted to do, tell a little joke, is somehow even more dangerous than dancing to a dead man's ribs. Here is a genuinely dangerous idea. You think of something funny, not an ordinary joke, but a political one, the kind whispered in kitchens with a tap running to cover the sound. In most countries, a joke about the leadership earns a tired eye roll. Here it could earn you a file, a knock at the door, and a long unpaid holiday somewhere very cold. The anecdote, the Soviet political joke, was both a national art form and a national risk. Everyone told them, everyone laughed, and everyone glanced, just briefly, at whoever happened to be laughing the loudest. The